everybody. So the Jewish holidays are upon us, and when I was a kid, my Great Aunt Gert used to make this special dessert called Taiglach. We call them the Taigles. Well, when she passed, my father, who isn't exactly a chef, carried on the tradition. In more recent years, I've been doing it. So I am going to teach you how to make the Taigles, although it's not an easy recipe. The first thing that you have to have is a big pot like this to cook them in. Also, you need a mixer of some kind. I like the big mixer like this, but you might be able to use a hand mixer. There's a lot of kneading involved in this. So let's get to it. I'm going to show you how to make Aunt Gert's Teiglach. Let's make the dough. We start off with 6 eggs, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of oil, a half a teaspoon of ginger, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and then we're going to add around 3 to 4 cups of flour. Before we start adding flour, we're going to mix this up a little bit. I always use the dough hook for this. I have it on low as I'm going to start adding flour, and the dough will start to come together. And actually, I'm going to turn this up just a little bit more. The flour will start to rise up from this mixture. So what you do is you turn it off as it's mixing and you push it down, and we'll mix it up a little bit more. And it's starting to form around the hook. At some point, you bring everything out. You can even do a little hand kneading yourself. I'm going to grab my big cutting board here. You'll take the bowl and cover the Taigles. And you cover it for about 10 minutes. All right, 10 minutes are up. We're going to start making the knots. So grab a knife, just a little knife, and start cutting strips. Usually the recipe makes around 60 to 75. So what you want to do is you want to start rolling these up, elongate them, and make a little knot. Taigles, more than usual. So we're going to get the pot. So we're going to throw in about 3 pounds of honey and 2 pounds of sugar, about 3/4 of a cup of water, and 1 teaspoon of ginger. And I use an electric stove. You don't want to put the heat up too high because the Taigles will burn. And I heat it at about medium. Once we start putting the Taigles in, we'll put it at about medium low. So the vat has come to a rolling boil, as my aunt says in the recipe. And so I'm going to start dropping in the Taigles, dropping in the knots now. You got to make sure that the juice covers all of the knots. And what we're going to do is you want to have some ginger ready, because what we're going to do is we're going to let it sit for 20 minutes and then put in some ginger. Then we're going to let it sit for 10, put in more ginger, 10, ginger, 10. We want to make sure that we have our tea ready to boil during those last 10 minutes, because what we're going to do is we're going to put the tea around the sides. Within the 10-minute periods, you can absolutely check the vat. Taigles were a little bit too still light heading into this last 10 minutes, so I actually upped the fire just a little bit to almost medium. It started really starting to bubble up, so I turned it right back down. The last thing you want this to do is bubble up, because this is a mixture that's going to get on everything. It's going to ruin everything, so you do not want that mixture bubbling up. It is very, very important that you keep it lower. We're going to put 1 more teaspoon of ginger in. You want to keep the remaining juice in the pot. One of the keys to making Teiglach is keeping the Taigle juice, because you not only want to have a nice little sauce, so to speak, to dip the Taigles in once they're done. I use it in a lot of different things. Pretty much anytime something calls for honey, I replace it with Taigle juice. Now we're going to what's called the hardball stage. In a small glass, pour cold water. With a wooden spoon, drop the juice into the glass. It's done if the juice hardens in the water in ball shapes. Once that's finished, turn off the heat, add 1 1/4 cup of hot tea around the inside edges of the pot. Oh, yes. Do you see what came out here? Yes. So now we're just getting the tea ready here. You pour it around the edges, and you can see it's starting to bubble up even more. But you want to be very careful with that, because it can get really, really bad if you have the heat too high. And there you have it, folks. My Aunt Gert's Teiglach. We're going to let this cool before we start transferring it into any containers, but you also want to taste 1 or 2 just to make sure they're all right. But yeah, you got to leave those for at least 10, 15 minutes or so. maybe even more if they're really, really hot, because it is going to be very hot coming out of the vat, the pot. And there you have it. It's not an easy recipe. It does take you a couple of hours to make, but it is just something that I am really glad to bring to the Needham community as well as the internet community as a whole. Thank you very much, folks. See you later.